Starting out this countdown at number 10, Spirit Lake origins. Spirit Lake's name is said to be no mystery to those who live in Idaho. The story goes that years ago, a young Native American woman began a relationship with a brave man from a rival tribe. Unable to wed but determined to preserve their doomed love, the two tied their wrists together in symbolic marriage and jumped from a cliff into the lake where others tend to go to take their lives. It's said that on the moonlit nights you can see their shadowy spirits drifting across the lake in a phantom canoe, while mournful sounds fill the air as the Indian lovers seek release from their watery grave. Now here at number 9, Coyote and the Seven Devils. The Seven Devils form a portion of the Idaho-Oregon border, as well as line the most treasured river canyon called Hell's Canyon. The Nez Perce in particular had origin stories for nearly every feature of Idaho's diverse landscape, and the story of the Seven Devils is a unique one. Many years ago, there were 7 child-eating giant brothers who lived on the horizon. The people were terrified of these giants. They sent word to Coyote to help them defeat the giants and save their children. Coyote knew he couldn't battle 7 giants at once, so he dug massive holes in the earth and filled them with boiling liquid. As the giants were traveling east to snatch more children, they tripped into the holes and were trapped. Coyote was then able to transform the giants into stone, and he opened up a canyon at their feet to keep them from ever reaching the villages again. Coming in at number 8, Idaho doesn't exist. According to dozens of web pages which have genuinely called into question the very existence of Idaho as a physical location, the gem state simply doesn't exist, people say. People say it's down to 3 premises. Do you know anybody from Idaho? Have you ever been to Idaho? Do you know anyone who's ever been to Idaho? For most, the answer is no. Therefore, that's why people say Idaho doesn't exist. In fact, the general consensus is that Idaho was put on the map because cartographers needed a barrier to separate Utah from Canada and protect Montana from Washington, or vice versa. One explanation is that Idaho is a government-operated mind control vacuum. Another theory is that Idaho exists, but only as a state of mind. The whole debacle stirs up an abundance of very real philosophical arguments, but according to conspiracy logic, if you feel like you're living in Idaho right now, odds are it is simply the result of other conspiracies at work. Now personally, I don't believe this one, but there are some people who really full-heartedly believe it. Here at number 7, Charlie. The legend of Charlie the lake monster was first recorded in the early 1920s when railroad workers in McCall saw something unexplainable. In McCall, locals will tell you the tale of this creature. Charlie has been known as Slimy Slim and the Twilight Dragon of Payette Lake. Over the years, this serpent-like creature with a dragon head has made many appearances. Most think it's a log before it rises up to reveal its head. The last documented sighting came in 2002, but in 1954, the Payette Lake Star newspaper held a contest challenging readers to come up with a name for this elusive creature. The winner was Leigh Isle Henneferturi of Springfield, who came up with the name Charlie. Charlie continued to be spotted over the years, but it has been seen less and less frequently. It is reported to be between 10 and 50 feet long, brownish green, having a shell, and travels in serpent-like waves, rising and falling out of the water. But this gentle beast garners nothing but love from locals, who can't seem to recall an incident when Charlie attacked any of the lakeside city's residents. Very much like the Loch Ness Monster, except the Loch Ness Monster doesn't get as much love, and it seems like every place has its own version of a monster in a body of water. Number 6, Idaho is purposely drugging its residences. In 1947, it's said that Lewiston began adding fluoride into its water, as did the vast majority of United States cities, a practice which still exists today. Many suspected, however, that the addition of fluoride, which is approved as an easy way to cut down on widespread tooth decay, was in fact a large-scale attempt to underhandedly medicate Idaho's citizens, as well as a means of covering up the drastic lack of dental care provided for the state's working people who were poor. The dramatic decrease in childhood cavity levels recorded by 1950 supported the practice as a whole, but to this day, fluoride is still majorly opposed for a variety of reasons, including links to cancer and bone loss. Halfway at number 5, Lake Pend. This deep ocean-like lake in northern Idaho is said to be the perfect place for a monstrous beast to reside. It is said to be large, gray, and prehistoric in shape and size. Locals claim he is an unknown remnant of the Jurassic era that has managed to survive extinction, against all odds. Up until this point, the creature has remained a peaceful part of local lore, although many say that sightings of the sea creature were merely glimpses of Naval Training Station's top-secret submarine and technological testing. Coming in at number 4, Civic Theater. Before this building housed the Lewiston Civic Theater, it was a Methodist church built in 1904. In 1972, it became a theater, and in 1982, 2 women and 1 man all mysteriously disappeared from the theater on the same night. Both women were found unfortunately deceased off of the property 2 years later, suspected to be victims of a homicide. The man, however, was never found, and his mystery remains unsolved. Whether or not these 3 people haunt the building, there have been numerous sightings of other ghosts in the theater. Actors and theatergoers have seen apparitions of a red-haired man, a spectacled presence in the mailroom, and an elderly gentleman in the doorway. A ghost of a director has been seen in the balcony, and apparently a bride weaves herself through the seats. Here at number 3, Massacre Rocks Water Babies. This one comes from Pocatello, where you can hear the crying of babies late at night if you sit by the river alone in the dark. Many believe that it's the sound of babies that mothers were forced to take the lives of during a famine rather than watch them starve till they passed away. Some think that these babies grew gills and learned to survive. Depending on the story you hear, a water baby is said to be a spirit or monster traditionally seen as a Native American bred urban legend of small childlike creatures living in the waters of reservations around the western United States. It is rumored that they are tricksters whose main goal is to take the lives of others. Coming in at number 2, the Murder House. The Murder House of Boys was the site of the vicious passing of Preston Murr more than 30 years ago. After an argument broke out in the basement of the house between Murr and 2 men, Murr was shot and then hacked into pieces that were dumped 100 miles away from Brownlee Reservoir. His body parts surfaced and led investigators back to the house, which is allegedly still haunted today. Many former residents and visitors of the house have said that the basement has a very creepy feeling. Even footsteps from an invisible person have been heard. There are also legends about the house that say bloodstains appear and then disappear, and a woman in old-fashioned clothing has been seen looking out the window.
Now the rumor is that this 21-year-old man will forever haunt this home, and even non-believers believe it's created an urban legend.
Living there, I really don't feel that I was never afraid or felt that it was haunted, but there are so many stories. I mean, everybody's convinced that it is.
Now here at our number 1 spot, the Phantom Jogger of Canyon Hill. At Cadwell's Canyon Hill Cemetery, it's said that the ghosts don't like when you stare at their graves late at night. According to the legend, if you park between the 2 trees across the street from the entrance at midnight, you will see something quite terrifying. Make sure to turn your lights off though, so you can see the legless jogger when she knocks on your window. After you've completely freaked out and almost totally lost your mind, she leaves just as quickly as she came. Someone has said that they parked in this spot to investigate, but they did it at noon, so it wasn't very dark. They said they didn't see any ghosts, but that it was still very creepy.
At number 10 spot, we have CRISPR babies. Imagine you could customize yourself however you like, including your height, your skin color, your voice, and maybe testosterone for men. Well, this is what Chinese researcher Ho Zhenku did. In 2018, the Chinese researcher made the world's first gene-edited baby using CRISPR-Cas9. CRISPR was a new technology that allowed for DNA editing. Specifically, Ho was trying to encode an HIV co-receptor with the goal of making a set of baby twins resistant to the virus. Except this form of gene editing is more scary than that. Scientists say that it can be used for virtually any other modification. At our number 9 spot, we have the social credit system. In 2014, China released a renowned social credit system. The one most of us have heard about, you know, on TikTok, YouTube, everywhere has talked about it. But many of us don't understand how it works. It basically is a system that works with AI, CCTV, surveillance footage, and listening devices that either rewards you or takes away points. In a way, these points decide how valuable you are as a person in the society. The fear of having a low social credit score is nationwide because you may be put up on a massive billboard for everyone to see and mock. Examples of how you can increase your social credit score include talk about the Chinese government on social media, donating to charity, helping people around your community, teaching Chinese, basically anything that's good or good for China. To lose points, you can drive over the speed limits, litter around, play your music a little bit too loud, or even spending money on something that they deem is dumb purchases. And punishments for having low scores could mean bans from public transit, slowed down Wi-Fi, or even banned from any luxurious restaurants or hotels. The fact that they implemented the Black Mirror episode into real life is scary enough, but the fact that the government is constantly stalking and judging you is even more terrifying. At a number 8 spot, we have super drones. To increase their military presence in the open waters, China has unveiled a mothership named the Zhuhei Yun, which carries over 50 advanced unmanned drones. So basically, it's an unmanned boat carrying autonomous drones, so no human is on board, and yet the ship is capable of destruction on a different level. Each drone is very intelligent. Each one knows what the other one is doing, so if these drones decide to attack a human, then all of the other drones would attack too. Warfare without the use of human soldiers is horrible. These drones can move at the speeds no human can reach. They can hit and detect at ranges no human could ever possibly think about. And they're able to be made just like that. Just imagine if they decide to put their entire funding on these drones and made a complete army. Elon said this about the situation.
You can make a swarm of assassin drones for very little money by just taking the Face ID chip that's used in cell phones and having a small explosive charge and a standard drone, and have them just do a grid sweep of the building until they find the person they're looking for, ram into them and explode. You can do that right now. No new technology is needed. Right now.
At our number 7 spot, we have the artificial sun. Located at the Institute of Plasma Physics of the Chinese Academy of Sciences in Hefei, China, lies the sun. But Andrew, the sun is in outer space, not in China. Sorry, my bad. The artificial sun. Sounds pretty terrifying on the surface. Just imagine how hot the sun is and how much power is contained within that. Fortunately, their purpose was for something else well needed in the future, and that is energy. There is no question we're running out of fossil fuels, and all the other methods we have tried are just not sustainable over long periods of time. China then created the sun to unlock clean and limitless energy. Then in this year, they were able to reach a record high of 126 million degrees Fahrenheit at its core. And for those who don't know, that's 5 times hotter than the sun. They needed this core so hot because this intense pressure and the high temperature make atomic nuclei fuse together, which creates new elements or energy. Except in this case, this sun could make limitless energy. At number 6 spot, we have AI supremacy. China has been leading the world in the development of artificial intelligence for years now. China has also made significant headway in developing practical applications of AI. In particular, the country is making major strides in self-driving cars, facial recognition, and voice recognition, especially used with their social credit system I mentioned above. But should we be worried? Yes and no. AI is good for its various uses, but in the hands of the wrong people, AI could mean the end of our civilization. And in more scary news, according to the Telegraph, the Institute of Artificial Intelligence at Hefei Comprehensive National Science Center created an AI program that could allegedly analyze brain waves and facial expressions to gauge whether a person is loyal to the Chinese Communist Party, basically claiming that it could read our minds. Right in the hump of our list, we have supersonic missiles. China has the 2nd largest budget on their military, so best know they're chasing USA in the arms race, especially in the missile arms race with the recent developments of a hypersonic missile. For those who don't know, hypersonic missiles are these missiles that can travel between 5 to 25 times the speed of sound, which makes them increasingly hard to hit, along with the fact that they can operate in a different region of the atmosphere. To put it in perspective, slower subsonic missiles travel a bit lower, and intercontinental ballistic missiles are a bit higher, which makes these guys right in the middle region where many countries don't have the capability to detect. This summer, China has had claimed that they sent hypersonic missiles out and it went around the world. The scary thing is that Russia has claimed their hypersonic missiles are able to carry nukes around the world, and China is only growing their nuclear arsenal as we speak, with many estimating that they would have about 1,000 warheads by the end of the decade. At number 4 spot, we have facial recognition. I elaborated about this on the past points, but I want to show you guys just how scary facial recognition software is. At any given time, China's CCTV surveillance cameras can detect a person, who they are, what family they came from, what crimes they committed, what they do for work, and obviously their social credit score. China's facial recognition system logs literally every single Chinese citizen, and they have a population of 1.4 billion people, meaning that database is probably massive. China has also been accused of using this to commit the atrocities done against the Muslims in the country. They did this by using the same AI to locate Muslims within the crowds and later approach them for questioning. Being watched by the government on all your action definitely affects the behavior of a human. So in a way, this technology is controlling the population to act a certain way deemed appropriate by the Chinese government. Guess wearing hyper-realistic mask is the new thing they do in China. All the way at a number 3 spot, we have an EMP. We mentioned hypersonic missiles in my last points, but they also have the capability to carry EMPs. EMPs, or electromagnetic pulse, is an intense electric burst that damages electronics over a given area. It acts like a giant magnet, breaking everything electronic along its path. This would mean a complete shutdown of power grids, and it can even corrupt the data inside of hard drives, which is detrimental if used on government buildings and areas. Basically, this could cause cities to be in complete darkness. Although it doesn't do anything to humans directly, the issue is much bigger than that. Have you ever spent a day without internet or power? How many issues did you have initially? Now imagine that at a larger scale where your government is in complete darkness as well. Sounds like a huge threat. At number 2 spot, we have biological warfare. Many have claimed that the coronavirus originating from Wuhan, China was actually a biological weapon they released to cause global panic. Allegedly, Chinese military scientists were already looking in 2015 how to create a weaponized biological weapon based on documents obtained by the US State Department. Although China declined any sort of allegations towards releasing COVID on purpose, it's widely known that China is notorious for lying and hiding everything not from just the world but their own citizens. After seeing how the world reacted to the pandemic, biological warfare seems like the best way to control citizens and cause international panic. So whatever China did, it worked. At number 1 spot, we have stronger military planes. As I mentioned earlier, China is advancing their military very quickly after pouring in more and more money every single year. One of their military advancements include the J-20 fighter jet, and it was made with a purpose to combat the American fighter plane, the F-22 Raptor. Notorious for its stealth, speed, and agility, the J-20 is capable of reaching speeds up to 2,000 kilometers per hour, but they are not known for the speed. Instead, the Chinese government emphasized the stealth component, making it an effective long-range interceptor. They have currently built an arsenal of around 200 of them, which are all functional and ready for a battle. General Wilsbash discussed and praised another one of Chinese planes named the KJ-500, mentioning their features of long-range air-to-air missiles and how that greatly changes the playing field in the air. At number 10 spot, we have the Seven Sisters Road. Located in southeast Nebraska, just outside Nebraska City, is a road that locals call Seven Sisters Road. And if you're trying to find this on a map, it will be named L Street. But I wouldn't recommend taking a road trip down this place. Legend goes that a man had an argument with his parents and his 7 sisters. It got to a point when his whole family hated him and he looked to seek revenge. So one day he waited in the woods outside of his home and waited for his parents to leave. After he forced or baited his sisters one by one outside of the house, he would end up hanging each and every single one of them where this road is situated today. Then eventually a road would be built on this path of the trees, causing them to be shut down. Ever since the construction of the road, this road is said to be haunted by the 7 sisters who were executed. Many who have driven through the area report having problems with their cars stalling, headlights mysteriously dimming, speedometers freezing, and windows that roll up and down seemingly on their own. At our number 9 spot, we have Alliance Theater. On the east side of Nebraska is one of the most iconic buildings in the state, and that is the Alliance Theater. This was built back in 1903, starting off as a hotel, but in 1938, it was then rebranded into Imperial Theater until it switched to the name Alliance. It would host many different performing arts, but it said a few performers passed away inside of the theater. Some were caused by accidents, such as an actress named Mary who passed away after a piece of lighting equipment fell on her. Now, over the years, over its existence, many workers at the theater have reported their own ghostly tales. Some include whispers as if someone's right behind them and shadow figures walking around, and some are even seen performing. Even in 2002, the owner Gerald Bullard had said to reporters that, quote, if the theater is actually haunted, then the ghosts are very friendly. It still remains open to this day, and many visitors claim to see the spirit of Mary. At our number 8 spot, we have Blackbird Hill. North of Decatur, Nebraska is a hill overlooking the Missouri River, and this hill is said to be infested with spirits. One notorious spirit that most visitors spot is of a young lady who could be screaming near the cliff. Legend goes that in 1840, a young couple in the area fell in love. This relationship carried both of them through school, but soon after they were done, the boy decided to travel abroad. His initial plan was to travel the world, then come back and marry the girl. But after a few months, the man never ended up returning back home. Months turned into years, and eventually the devastated girl gave up and married another man. The new couple then decided to move to a small cabin to what is now Blackbird Hill. And this is when the girl spotted her ex-fiance walking up to the cabin. She was shocked and then confessed the love for the man and went back home to tell her new fiance that she wanted to leave him and have a divorce. The new fiance got very angry and in a rage took her to the nearby cliff and proceeded to jump off together. The ex-fiance arrived, but just too late, only to hear the agonizing scream of his former wife. This occurred on October 17th, and many visitors gather up in this day because it said that you can still hear her screams down the cliff. At our number 7 spot, we have the Poison Girl at Centennial Hall. Built in 1897 in Valentine, Nebraska, is the historic Centennial Hall. It functions now as a 12-room museum, but before it was originally built to be a high school for the kids in the area. Then in 1947, a young female student was murdered inside of the school. She passed away after playing on her clarinet. This caused everyone to suspect that someone had intentionally poisoned her clarinet root. Ever since the incident, the school is haunted by this little girl. The teachers will report her in their classrooms after school times, and this would accompany the feeling of dread. Other visitors and students report to hear her clarinet being played in a very ominous way. Now as a museum, visitors still report this little girl roaming the halls. She is said to have tugged on people's clothing, as well as placing her clarinet on many of the artifacts inside of the museum in hopes that someone will play it and be poisoned like she was. At number 6 spot, we have radioactive hornets. Although this theory is debunked, it was a crazy one when it was first released in the media because many people didn't know how radiation worked and whatever they said about it would just scare you. Story goes that after the nuclear disasters following World War II in the 1940s, Japan's Fukushima nuclear plant created a giant mutant killer hornet due to their exposure to radiation. The hornets were said to have grown 4 times their size and were reproducing exponentially. Then one year in Nebraska, it was reported that many people were passing away with stings and swelling on their bodies, which led many people to place a blame on radioactive hornet. Again, this is just a myth and no radiation didn't cause overgrown killer hornets. But still, these large Japanese hornets do exist and they go by the name of Asian giant hornet. At a number 5 spot, we have the Bailey House Museum. This red brick house in Brownsville was built just after the Civil War by Unison officer Captain Benson M. Bailey. He, alongside his wife, lived in this house for many years until financial depression hit, causing them to move away. This relocation would eventually place them in a more dangerous area, leading to their eventual murders. Their murders were never solved, but many claim that it was the fault of a jealous neighbor who poisoned the two in order to get their property. Whatever happened, what is known is that the spirit of Captain Benson Bailey is said to lurk the home to this day. He is said to slam doors open and shut in the house in order to display his dominance, and when he's agitated, he will swing them back and forth until you just stop doing whatever it is that he doesn't like. Others have reported seeing the man himself walking the halls and even standing up against the doors motionlessly. At a number 4 spot, we have Hummel Park. Despite being a beautiful park in appearance, there is a much darker story to it that makes you think twice before stepping foot here. This area is said to be the place where many lynchings, hangings, and satanic rituals were performed, and some believe they are happening to this day deep within the woods of the park. A stairway in the park has been called the Stairs to Hell because it is reported that it's impossible to count the same number of steps ascending the stairs as it is descending the stairs. Other than the fact that this place is covered in satanic graffiti, this place is just one of those places you shouldn't test out. You know? Just in case. At a number 3 spot, we have Walgren Lake Monster. Just west of Nebraska is the Walgren Lake, and this body of water is said to hold a 40 to 100 feet beast. Witnesses have said it looks like an alligator that has 2 front legs and a flipper on its back. Others have said it has a serpentine body, which closely resembles the Loch Ness Monster. But I swear, everyone everywhere believes they have the Loch Ness Monster in their area, or is that just me? It's said that you'll know this monster is near is that when you smell a hard stench of rotting flesh. The first written record of this monster is from a 1922 issue of the Hay Springs News. The following year, a local man named J.A. Johnson described the monster in an interview with the Omaha World Herald. According to the report, Johnson and his 2 friends were camping on the banks of the lake when they noticed a creature about 60 feet away. The men claimed that as soon as the beast saw them, it belted out a huge roar, whipped around, and plunged beneath the muddy lake water. At a number 2 spot, we have the Ball Cemetery. Ball Cemetery is a cemetery in Springfield, Nebraska that was first used during the 19th century by pioneers. There is only one way in and one way out, and trespassers have been greeted by a caretaker with a shotgun who lives nearby. But instead of the caretaker keeping people out of his cemetery, it's more like he's trying to stop them from entering a place that is cursed. For decades, it has been said that this dark and lonely plot of land in the middle of nowhere is haunted by mysterious entities that defy rational explanation. Tall male apparitions sometimes attack nighttime visitors, and a female ghost laughs, speaks, and tugs on people's clothing. Photographs taken here often contain anomalies which believers swear are evidence of ghostly presences. All the way at a number 1 spot, we have the Hatchet House. In the town of Portal, there is a 1-room schoolhouse that held a very gruesome murder. Legend says that back in the early 1900s, a teacher snapped at her students after they were misbehaving for hours. She had already been having problems back at home as well, so this was her final straw. Except this would be a little bit too brutal for our liking. She would then proceed to lock the door to the classroom and pull out a rusty hatchet from underneath her desk. From here, she would decapitate every single student in the class, and then she took their heads and placed them on top of each of their desks. and it gets worse, so I apologize. She then carved out their hearts and brought them over to a nearby bridge to throw them down below one by one. Well, these are the top 10 Nebraska scary urban legends. What state should we do next? Leave a comment down below. I'm your host Andrew, and I hope you have a scary day. At our number 10 spot, we have booby traps. This war was infamous for Vietnam's use of guerrilla warfare on the US troops, but this came largely due to the fact that Americans invaded, locked, and loaded. Despite what many believe, the US outgunned and outmanned the communists, so they needed to find other ways to fight them. And their response was these intricate booby traps. These things were devastating, and just by the looks of it, I understand why US troops' morales were dropped completely down the drain after running into these. The jungle terrain was hard enough having to deal with hiding soldiers and underground tunnels, but imagine walking and running into some of these traps. Some include the punji sticks, which were these sharpened bamboo coated in either poison, feces, or even urine, which could cause immediate infection if stabbed. Another one is the cartridge trap. When soldiers stepped on this trap, a nail acting as a firing pin shoots bullets straight up at the victim. We also have the mace, which is a tripwire trap that triggers a 40-pound spiked ball that swings from a tree and gets stuck onto its victims. These were only a small list of the booby traps contained within these dense jungles. I feel like I should make a top 10 on this, but if you guys are interested to see, here are some other traps. Terrifying, right? At number 9 spot, we have Operation Wandering Soul. The sounds coming from the Vietnam War definitely ranks one of the highest in terms of pure horror. With the Viet Cong hiding in the dense jungles, nowhere to be seen, Americans knew that they needed to bring their morale down without the use of firearms. So in the middle of the night, they would commence Operation Wandering Soul. This is a way for Americans to demoralize the Viet Cong by playing eerie sounds and altered voices on speakers. These sounds were supposed to mimic a wandering soul because in Vietnamese culture, if a proper burial is not done, the soul of the deceased will wander the earth as a malevolent spirit. And during the Vietnam War, many soldiers didn't get a proper burial. The most famous of their recordings was named Ghost Tape number 10, and the best way to explain it is just to play it for you guys. At number 8 spot, we have Agent Orange. With the jungle being an issue for American soldiers, they decided to use a controversial weapon known as Agent Orange. I warn you, this one is pretty cruel. Agent Orange was a herbicide mixture which contained a dangerous chemical known as dioxin. For those who don't know, dioxin is extremely toxic and can cause skin lesions, developmental problems, immune system damage, and can cause cancer. They estimate that around 3 million Vietnamese people had been affected by Agent Orange during the war, with a recorded of up to 150,000 children born with serious birth defects due to this chemical. Other than the lives this chemical took, the worst part about this was that the dioxin could remain in the soils for decades. This has caused Agent Orange to have detrimental effects to this day. After seeing its destructive power, the US decided to ban Agent Orange in 1971. They took it to the Johnston Atoll and destroyed the last one in 1978. At our number 7 spot, we have My Lai Massacre. This could possibly be one of America's worst war crimes they have ever committed, so it's pretty dark, just for the warning. On March 16, 1968, a platoon of US soldiers brutally massacred a total up to 347 unarmed civilians at My Lai. They were told inside that Viet Cong were in the area, but when they arrived there, they weren't there. Despite no sign of hostility, Lieutenant William Calley gave the orders for them to open fire on the villagers. The victims included men, women, children, and even infants. After they violated and mutilated the villagers, they went on to burn the village along with slaughtering all of their livestock. It was a complete war crime. It wasn't until an army pilot named Hugh Thompson was walking when he noticed bodies and bodies of civilians as he approached the gunfire. But as he approached the gunfire, he noticed that it was his own comrade shooting. In a change of events, Hugh gave them the orders to stop or he would open fire on them. A total of 26 soldiers were charged with criminal offenses, but only William Calley would be convicted and found guilty of taking the lives of 22 villagers. He was given a life sentence. This event will remain a huge stain on the US military for a long time. At a number 6 spot, we have the Ace of Spades. Another example of psychological warfare done by the US was the Ace of Spades. And yes, I'm talking about the playing card. So for background info, the US Airborne Division used to put an Ace of Spades on their helmet for good luck. Fast forward to the Vietnam War and the US soldiers made it a tradition to leave an Ace of Spades on the helmets of deceased Vietnamese soldiers. Soon the card would be associated with death to both the Vietnamese and the Americans. Eventually, as more Viet Cong saw this happening, their morale would go down and the Americans knew this. So Charlie Company asked the US playing card company to supply them with crates filled with the Ace of Spades cards, which were labeled as Bicycle Secret Weapon upon arrival. And they used all these cards and they dropped them all over Vietnamese Vietnamese villages and jungles to frighten them. The Americans would continue to use this to taunt them by keeping it on their helmet as an anti-peace sign. This card would be later known as the death card. Right in the hump of our list we have napalm. The Vietnam War had its fair share of destructive weapons, but nothing comes close to napalm, which would have been the worst weapon used in a war since the atomic bomb. Napalm, in simple terms, is basically liquid fire or a firebomb fuel gel mixture. It would often have a gelling powder composed of naphthalene and palmitate mixed with gasoline to form a sticky combustible substance. Its sticky nature is the reason why it was so devastating when it released. The substance would stick onto its victims all while burning them alive, or at least causing 4th or 5th degree burns. The area napalm can cover up to 2,500 square yards, which would be completely engulfed in fire. The reason for these bombs in the first place was to support ground troops and to demoralize the enemy. Burning alive has got to be one of the worst ways to go, and seeing this fire would literally be seeing hell on earth. It eventually got banned in 1980 by the United Nations and listed as a war crime. Glad to know this one is gone, but the fact we got to see its powers is terrifying for the future. At number 4 spot, we have the AK-47 over the M16. During the war, American troops would abandon their American-owned M16 assault rifles to use the Viet Cong's AK-47 instead. This was a reason because the M16 was just not as reliable as the AK-47. First, the US changed their ammunition sizes without notifying, and it caused a lot of these guns to jam at pretty random times, which you could imagine would be pretty inconvenient in a gunfight. Second, the M16 couldn't be handled in jungle terrain. It would regularly jam when mud seeped into the gun. I mean, let's compare the two. The AK-47 is a 7.62mm gas-operated assault rifle with the capability to shoot up to 600 rounds per minute. It's claimed to be the most powerful due to the fact it doesn't break or even jam or even overheat. I mean, I don't even need to mention the M16, it has nothing compared to the AK-47. At number 3 spot, we have the Cu Chi tunnels. Deep inside the jungles were not only booby traps, but a system of underground tunnels for the Viet Cong to hide and move around unnoticed. These were known as the Cu Chi tunnels. These were a network of underground tunnels stretching more than 124 miles long. Although these tunnels were known internationally from the Vietnam War, Vietnamese did this well before, back in the 1940s during the War for Independence from the French. However, it wasn't until the Vietnam War where the tunnels would be dug for miles, with reports saying that the tunnels travel from the outskirts of Saigon all the way to the Cambodian border. These tunnels were by far anywhere near safe. Not only did you have to worry about the tunnels collapsing due to the poor construction of it, there would be snakes and scorpions and other booby traps inside of these tunnels. It's said that 45,000 Vietnamese men and women passed away defending these tunnels during the war. At number 2 spot, we have the massacre at Hue. Hue was one of the longest and bloodiest bouts during the Vietnam War, lasting a total of 26 days. During that time, up to 6,000 civilians and prisoners of war were abused, tortured, and executed at random. The Viet Cong believed this to be a cleansing of the area to anyone who opposed the rule and those who were invading their country. This battle was part of the Tet Offensive, which is when North Vietnam launched a grand-scale assault on every city in South Vietnam. The Viet Congs had a total of 80,000 troops ready before this assault, and despite the Americans knowing about this prior, they were still caught off guard. At a number 1 spot, we have Welcome with Flowers. The earliest Americans participating in the Vietnam War worked for the Office of Strategic Services, which served as the CIA's forerunner. As early as 1954, they were assisting the French and Southern governments of Saigon. Marines made their first official ground landing in Da Nang in 1965, beginning the first formal ground operation. Instead of a D-Day invasion, local women and flowers were welcomed to the troops. This would forever be eerie because of what happened following this event. The Vietnam War was brutal for both sides, and this side of friendliness is so uncharacteristic of the time. Who knows, the Vietnamese girls who put the flowers on the US soldiers could have been the future victims of their firearms, making this one the top of our list. At number 10 spot, we have the water tank of Dapashi. Located in Dapashi, Basundara, I am so sorry if I mispronounced that, lies this innocent looking underground tank to store water around the community. Although this is necessary for any community and serves as a benefit, many locals are actually too afraid to go anywhere near it. Of course, this doesn't mean that they couldn't get their water due to fear. Instead, they would probably just ask someone else to get it for them. But what could stop people from getting a basic necessity like water? It all started with the sounds of crying, shouting, and other strange noises coming from inside of the tank, and it was said that the sounds grew even louder by the nighttime. This is also the time where locals claim that they also see the spirit of a decomposing man standing nearby the tank. Legends say that a group of robbers mugged a man near this water tank, and instead of a quick theft, one of the men accidentally killed the man, so they thought that they could put the body inside of this tank, and they locked it. But instead, hours later, they would hear the man struggling for his life inside of the water tank. Soon after, the man would pass and the robbers would get caught. But imagine drinking from this water tank after this incident. Doesn't this kind of remind you of Cecil Hotel a bit? Anyone? At number 9 spot, we have Raniban. Many people know Raniban for their breathtaking views and incredible sceneries, but inside of this nature escape is hidden something dark. Within the jungle of Raniban Maiban village, there's this gigantic tree looking straight out of a cartoon with its widespread and exposing roots. Except take away the beauty from this tree and you'll understand why every local avoids this. Warning, the story is pretty explicit, so viewer discretion is advised. Legend goes that several years ago a man assaulted and murdered a girl right underneath this tree. After some research, this turned out to be a true story and has a lot more disturbing details that I couldn't mention on this video. However, after her death, people in the area started to hear noticeable crying coming from underneath the tree, but when they went to investigate, nothing was there. And to make things even more spookier, just days after this, the man who murdered the girl was executed by hanging on the same tree. So best believe there's more than one ghost sitting underneath it. At number 8 spot, we have the ghosts of Mount Everest. Being the tallest mountain in the world, people are bound to come in thousands to conquer the challenge. However, with a fatality rate at 14%, many climbers have not been able to finish their trip and their bodies still lie on this mountain to this day. So best believe after seeing these bodies and hearing their horrific stories, some ghost stories in Everest are bound to pop up. On your journey to the top, chances are you'll come across the 3,000 corpses that lie on the mountain to this day. One is a man known as Green Boots, as seen on the body at the time of his death, but his real name is Swang Baljor. Many climbers claim to see the apparition of this climber with green boots encourage them to push through the journey. Being at such an extreme height, many mountaineers suffer from altitude sickness and causes many to see vivid hallucinations, with the majority of them claiming to see ghosts all around them, and I'm not surprised. At number 7 spot, we have the Royal Palace of Nepal. On June 1st, 2001, one of the worst royal massacres occurred at the Royal Palace of Nepal. The deaths included 9 members of the royal family, including King Birendra and Queen Aishwarya. The culprit turned out to be the son and crown prince, Dipendra, who is said to have opened fire on the palace grounds when a party was happening. He shot his own dad, his own mother, and his own siblings. And since we're talking about a monarchy, and also because he killed all other lines of succession, he was appointed king, but only for a temporary time as he was in a coma since the attack due to shooting himself. Shortly after the massacre, locals around the palace begin to hear sounds of screaming, shouting, and the most notorious sound they would document is the sound of gunshots. They claim it was the gunshots from the massacre, and its haunting sounds are still trapped in the palace to this day. At number 6 spot, we have the Lakey dance. To educate y'all in Nepal culture, one of their infamous traditions is this Lakey dance. This is considered the dance of a demon, and although the name is pretty daunting, the reason they do this is not. So Laki is the term they use to denote carnivorous demons, so the story goes that Laki fell in love with a Nepalese girl. So in an attempt to win her heart, the demon decides to take human form to see his lover, but when he decides to enter the city, everyone decides to capture him, well, because he is a demon. So the king meets with his demon and makes a pretty generous offer. He proposes that he gives the demon a place in the city only if he promises to protect the children from tragedies and other supernatural entities. So the demon agreed, hence the dance. The costumes they use are both beautiful and pretty terrifying, depending on how you want to look at it. And one odd thing about this tradition dance, opposed to other traditional dances, is that this dance is not taught, but it's said that the dancers have it inherited through their genes. This also causes many others to believe that the demon is in fact controlling them, but in the end of the day, he means well, so it's okay. Right in the hump of our list, we have Devghat. Devghat is a religious Hindu site located in Chichwan, also known as Aryaghat. On July 12, 2009, police discovered several human skulls and bones scattered all around the area. The case remains unsolved to this day. Well, it's because the grounds were formerly used for cremation. Groups like the Agoris and Tantrics come here to do some questionable rituals as well, which only adds to the local belief that this place is truly haunted. Specifically, locals claim to see around 4 to 5 women apparitions approaching the river by night. They appear to be dancing, but they're floating above the ground. The craziest thing about this is that they only start this dance by lighting themselves on fire, and only when they are completely engulfed in flames is when they'll begin their dance. And people claim to see their dance daily. At number 4 spot, we have Mugling and Naryangat. If you want to take a hike in Nepal, this place is definitely a must with their stunning waterfalls and untouched nature. Except despite this beauty, locals warn tourists to not travel down the roads nearby at night. This is because many have reported hitchhiking ghosts who disappear shortly after being picked up. As well, they also claim to see apparitions running in front of their car, which only causes a lot more accidents in the area. Police have already discovered several human bodies in the area, with many of the cases still unresolved. This led many to believe in the supernatural, but many others proposed a serial killer in the area, and it would make sense. But 2 theories, 2 bad options. In the past, the towns around the highway were just deserted fishing regions, which was a dangerous place for crime and violence. The spirits found on the highway were said to be tortured souls whose remains might lie unattended in the woods still. At number 3 spot, we have the Kya. A Kya is translated into a ghostly figure, but ghosts in Nepal are seen as something different than we see in the Western world. In Nepal, it's widely believed that every house contains a Kya and their backstory. Like any ghost, these Kya can either be good or they can be bad. The good will obviously protect the family, the home, and your luck, but the bad ones will do everything in their power to destroy your family and ultimately every single one of your lives. You'll know if you've seen a Kya because they are pretty distinct. They appear as a slender slender skeletons, so in a way they act as a poltergeist because you can see them the whole time instead of them just being invisible like any other ghost. It's believed they like to pull pranks like throwing objects around the house and throwing blankets off of you, and in some cases they will try to scare the family so bad that they will choose to leave the house completely, leaving the Kia all alone in the house. Although you can see this ghost, the majority of people will never actually know if they have a Kia in their place, and only you'll know if you fetch it out and seek one. Maybe you'll have one, but who knows. At number 2 spot with the Bokshi. Nepal legend says that witchcraft is widely practiced in remote areas of Nepal, except at this time their witch description was far from accurate. Basically, any woman who had something bad to say or raised her voice at the patriarchy would be considered a witch or a Bokshi. The problem with Bokshi is that it has become so extreme that women are being murdered in the name of this specific ritual and are forced to become a ghost, where they will be lost and seen roaming around the streets looking for answers. Even to this day, people are getting accused of being witches. Am I being confused, or am I in the Salem witch trial still? Because why are people still believing in this stuff? Just for excuse to execute women. I will never get it, and good for girls for haunting the streets for this one, because this one is kind of reasonable in my opinion. At number 1 spot, we have the Sundarijal. Located nearby Kathmandu is a river that is nowhere near your regular rivers back at home. Back in the day up until now, the river has been mainly used as a source of drinking water, but the fact many locals claim that the river is haunted has led many people to avoid a necessity like water. The river runs through a rainforest which is said to have restless souls hidden inside of it. As well, many have said that even touching the river can lead to your doom. Witnesses have seen locals and visitors reaching the river's edge only to tumble over and drown shortly after, and for some statistics, at least one person loses their life in this very river every single year. Now, as the years go by, the body count begins to rise up, causing more and more restless spirits. It could almost be said that this river is the closest thing to nature's own human sacrifice. Well,